Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee and Football presented by Austin Underground. Rick Vavro and Austin Underground, I might add. My name is Blake Monroe. I'm your host, joined by Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, like I am every morning. And guys, tell us where you're checking in from, what you're drinking.
Yes.
Love to see that. It's very cool to see where everybody is across the world. And then obviously get your questions in as well. We'll get to as many of those as we can here in just a little bit. But first, guys, let's start with the hot topic. It's been the hot topic all week. We've pretty much started with it every day. But the portal, a visitor on campus, and Dominic Williams, the TCU defensive tackle. What's the latest there and in the portal in general?
Yeah, first of all, good morning to everybody. And as I was thinking about how I was going to do this Dominic Williams update, which I posted an update on Texas Football, I thought it was only the representation for Texas fans. I needed a prop. So we're going to go with this while I'll tell you about Dominic Williams. Dom Williams made his visit to Texas, wrapping that up this morning. And Texas fans are clearly all in on Dominic Williams from TCU, the defensive lineman. Look, here's what I can tell you guys. I think the visit went as well as can be expected. Look, there's very rarely a bad visit to the University of Texas. There you see, I mean, everybody was there. I mean, Sark, Kenny Baker, you name it. I think the presentation Kenny Baker gave went very well, talking to somebody close to the recruitment on the Williams side. I think the presentation went really well. I think Steve Sarkisian conversations with Sark went very well. I think the culture at Texas, the player development, plus player development is huge in this. This is the final piece to the puzzle for a Dominic Williams who hopes to have 1 year left in college before he goes off to the NFL. Player development is still big, still very big. I think Texas checked all the boxes for Dominic Williams. With that said, the visit process continues for Dominic Williams. He's been to Oklahoma. He's been to Texas. He's now going to go to LSU. He'll see everybody's old friend Bo Davis this weekend, I believe that is. And he may also visit Missouri too. On Texas Football expects currently a decision from Dominic Williams mid to late next week. I think that's what everybody's thinking. So, if you're somebody said I would have had a well-done steak at VY Steakhouse, that obviously that's a good friend that knows me well. But for Texas fans, keep hope alive. We'll see what happens here with Dominic Williams, the TCU defensive lineman transfer. And I think Texas it did very well in this as expected. And I'm not going to handicap this. It's the NIL when you're still day and age, when you're still taking visits. But it wouldn't shock me if Texas wasn't ahead of Oklahoma heading in the last two visits.
Hey, Texas is not going to stop at defensive tackle either. They're going for some corners. We know that for a fact. And two of them to look out for right now. And we've said this before. Tacario Davis out of Arizona, a big priority. 6'3.5", 6'4" cornerback, had 15 pass breakups a year ago. Texas is absolutely involved there. How and what and all this other stuff. I think it's indicative, Jerry, of we as a media group, period. Okay. It is harder to get information sometimes on portal recruits than it is high school recruits.
Yeah.
They're much more as a whole. They play it closer to the vest. They have representation, and it's kind of interesting to watch what's transpiring. But Texas, we know, absolutely involved there. Also testing the waters with Arthur Johnson Jr., a corner / potential safety star. He can play a lot of different places for you out of Western Kentucky. So there may be more at defensive tackle too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, sure. If things don't necessarily work out with Dominic Williams, Texas not going to go quietly into that good night no matter what. All right, we got other things we got to talk about this morning. Texas got a basketball commitment yesterday. That was a big one, Jerry. We're going to get to that. The NFL draft is coming up today as well. But first, I want to say thank you to our sponsor each and every Thursday morning, brought to you by Rick Vavro and our friends from Austin Underground. Austin Underground has been specializing in commercial underground installations since the early 2000s. Rick and his team create a end-to-end solution that leaves clients not only happy and satisfied, but future clients as well for years to come. People go back and back to them because they do it so well. That's austinunderground.com for any commercial underground installation that you and your company or your land might need Austin Underground. Thank you, Jerry. Let's talk a little bit about Pope, the young man out of Oregon State that just committed to Texas yesterday. The big scoring machine of sorts. Now part of Rodney Terry's group.
Yeah, I'll hit on that in a second. I want to add a couple of questions here from the portal that followed up.
Okay.
D lineman that entered the portal from Georgia and Alabama. Look, those guys can't transfer within the SEC, and that includes Texas and Oklahoma, without sitting out a year. So those won't happen, as well as Texas is going for guys who are going to come in and be ready to play a lot of snaps, be a potential NFL player on a team that's competing for a national championship. So not really the unproven guys, even if they're talented. Texas has some really good guys like that are just coming up in the program. So those guys, first of all, you can't transfer within that SEC unless you sit out a year, and that even includes grad transfers per Bobby. And then Texas is looking for more experienced guys who are maybe 1 year and off to the NFL, maybe 2 years, and a pro prospect. That's really what Texas is looking at. Jordan Pope, huge commitment for Rodney Terry, Frank Haith, Chris Ogden, Ty Larson, Coach McClain, all those guys yesterday. Look, I'm a big Jordan Pope fan out of Oregon State. 6'1.5", point guard, combo guard, can really shoot the basketball. Now, he's a big shot maker, big shot taker. I mean, he had a game winner against Arizona this year from about 27 feet off the dribble going left, put up a career-high 31 against Arizona in that game. He's originally from Oakley, California, played at Prolific Prep, one of the top prep schools in the country. He's grown over an inch since his senior year in high school, averaged 17.6, 3.4 assists, 2.6 rebounds, hit 66 threes at 37%, 85+% free throw shooter. I absolutely really love the backcourt. And I think Frank Haith, and I've said this before, I think Chris Ogden, who's the GM of Texas basketball, I think Frank Haith has a real knack for this guy's putting off really the evaluation of offensive basketball players and putting those guys together on a roster. Now, these guys have to go out and play it, and Texas has work to do, which I'll get to the two of the top targets left, but Texas still has work to do, but the backcourt is done at this point, guys. I mean, Jordan Pope and Julian Larry, Texas has two legitimate ball handler point guard types, and they're different players. Julian Larry, off the dribble, kind of surprises you out of Indiana State with his athleticism. Really good court vision. Really good vision inside 12 feet, too. But Jordan Pope can absolutely shoot it. He can score it. And I'll say this. What I was talking about with Frank Haith now with Jordan Pope in the fold, the four guys out of the portal that Texas has taken this year, they combined to shoot 38% from three last year and 82% from the free throw line. Now you add Trey Johnson into that. You have Kendall Weaver. Texas backcourt's really good. Jason Kemp from Indiana State's a college four that can play three in a big lineup if you want to. But they're going to be a better big lineup team next year. They're going to have multiple guys who Trey Johnson can handle it and play in the ball screen game. So Texas is offensively is going to be where they need to be next year. Defensively, they need to get a wall up, big body, post defender, a rugged type of guy. Caden Shedrick's going to be able to face up enough next year. Jason Kemp playing the four can shoot the basketball and play facing the basket. But they need that big, strong, rugged wall-up defender. I mean, Brandon Garrison's the top guy, but he's also going to Arkansas this weekend. And I'm not sure, Texas has a couple other guys as well. They're going to find what they need there. Then there's the kid out of Air Force, Rydas Petraeus. He played at Arlington Oak Ridge in high school. That's a Texas-California battle. Really good offensive player that's a wing that can play some small forward in a small ball lineup. I think Texas has two more portal guys, positions that they will get to fill out this roster. But, guys, the backcourt's going to be really good. And it's going to be good because it's going to be more versatile. There's going to be more size. There's going to be a more playmaking off the dribble. And you're going to be able to play three guards. That's a big guard lineup. Tremont Mark, 6'6", Trey Johnson, near 6'6", Kendall Weaver, 6'3", to go with Julian Larry, who's 6'3", Jordan Pope, who's 6'1.5". So Texas backcourt's going to be pretty good next year, guys. And they're really going to be able to shoot the basketball from multiple spots. They're going to make a lot of free throws. I think it could be a 78-ish type free throw shooting team. So they're going to have the offensive pieces. We'll see how those defensive pieces fit together, and then how the team fits together in general. That's the one thing you just can't predict with all this stuff. Is there's a lot. Frank Hayek, I think, has done a great job, and Chris Ogden and Ty Larson identifying the guys and kind of putting this backcourt together. Now you got to see how it all meshes together, because it's a lot of guys that played a lot of minutes. Somebody's going to be sacrificing some minutes for team, or a couple of guys. So you just got to put it all together. But that was a big win for Texas over Texas A&M with Jordan Pope yesterday. And by the way, UT boy said the girls' backcourt is nasty. The girls, Vic got a big-time guard. We talked about that. The all Big Ten transfer from Michigan, Layla Filia, who's a tremendous 6-foot kind of wing player. The Texas women's backcourt is going to be amongst the top 2 in the college basketball next year.
Hey, I want to switch back before we go on to the next topic to football and the transfer portal. Obviously, Austin Jordan went in the portal yesterday as well, the defensive back out of Denton Ryan. We had heard just 2 days ago that he wasn't going into the portal and had decided not to. Much like Billy Walton, things change quickly sometimes, and he ended up going into the portal yesterday after all. So that was interesting to see transpire. That means that Texas now has 8 guys in the portal from this past year's team. They include Savion Red, Austin Jordan, Terrence Brooks, the only starter to transfer, Peyton Kirkland. Of course, the offensive lineman already found a home at Colorado, Jamon Tapp and Billy Walton at the edge, Samaje Burrell at linebacker, and Zach Swanson at defensive tackle. We think there might be at least 2 or 3 more that could go into the portal in the next week. Again, that ends at, actually, I say next week, by Tuesday of next week, the portal closes April 30th. So keep that in mind. I also want to mention this question. I've had a couple of smaller questions here. Stephen Cavazos, how come those guys can't transfer within the SEC, but Walter Nolan and Cam Coleman did? Here's the reason why. They did it at mid-year, after December.
Good point.
So the SEC rule is you can't transfer after February 1 and be eligible at the university. So, for example, I mean, Isaiah Bond did it, right, to Texas.
And Walter
Nolan and Cam Coleman did it before February 1.
Yeah.
Or never enrolled at the school of their choice. Then you also have this one from Skibrek. Are Big 12 portals also subject to 1-year wait period? No. This is a SEC only rule that Texas is bound to. The Big 12 does not have that rule, or did not have that rule back when Texas was in the Big 12. Also, grad transfers are part of this rule, even though here's the issue. Grad transfers, if it weren't the SEC, would not be bound by it. But this is an SEC rule. You cannot transfer after February 1 to another SEC school and still be eligible. That's it. It has nothing to do whether you're a grad, transfer, undergrad, etc. That's the SEC rule.
Well, guys, exciting night tonight for a handful of Longhorns, potentially 13 draft eligible Longhorns for tonight's draft. Of course, a few may be called tonight. Starts tonight on the NFL Network and ESPN. But what are we thinking here? What any surprises y'all think somebody may be taking earlier? What's y'all's thoughts tonight?
Hey, it also starts on Texas football. We're gonna have a watch with us at 7 p.m. tonight. Rod Babers, CJ, Bobby will pop in. I'll pop in. We're gonna have a watch with us for the first round. So if you're watching it there and you just want to look at Mel Kiper's hair but have the sound down, we'll be talking about it for the first round. Rod will be breaking it down. We'll also talk Texas football, spring football, recruiting portal, whatever. So let's all have some fun tonight. Bobby, I think somebody asked about Dominic Williams' visit. We'll reset that after this because we need to reset that a couple of times because there's an update on ontexasfootball.com right now. We've talked about it. We'll reset it after this. Bobby, the question is it going to be 1, 2, or 3 first-round picks for Texas tonight? Byron Murphy's the only guy that's a lock in the first round. I think he's pretty much locked to go inside the top 20. Could he go as high as 12? Is he going to shake out at 15, 16? Could he fall to 18? The mocks are all over the place. We'll see how everything falls out. He could also be the first defensive player off the board in this draft. But then the question really gets down to, does Xavier Worthy or Adonai Mitchell or both go in the first round? That's kind of going to be the question tonight. How does this draft fall from picks 20 to 32 in the first round? So Bill Belichick, I heard him say something on the Pat McAfee show that was so interesting the other day, talking about, the players that late first round. If you take that guy in the late first versus letting him slide to the second, if you're a team that really likes a guy, you get the 5th-year option on that player. So that's always the interesting thing at the end of the first round. You'll know if a team really values one of these Longhorn receivers if they take them late in the first round because they get the 5th-year option on those players.
Yeah, I'm hearing all of this. I'm looking at it a little bit differently. I was listening to Rod. I was on the live stream last night with Rod, and Rod had a couple of comments. He thought that Xavier Worthy and T'Vondre Sweat, in his opinion, were guys that had asterisks next to their names. And the reason he said that is because he could see teams that really value speed and see a Xavier Worthy sitting there could pop up earlier to get him.
Yeah,
because they don't want to miss out on that speed. Likewise, they don't want to see a T'Vondre Sweat because if they really need that inside run stopper, and he is an inside run stopper, I mean, he literally could be the heaviest defensive lineman in the NFL the minute he steps onto an NFL practice field. So just give you he thinks those two guys are kind of the wild cards for Texas. So they could be like trade. I don't want to say trade bait, but if they're still on the board, he thinks people could go up to get them. Not necessarily tonight with Sweat, but certainly with Worthy. My take on the draft, and this is something that Christian Kruger wrote overall that I think is just very, very important. And that is, this is the day or the week, whatever you want to call it, where Texas draft negative recruiting dies.
100%.
This is the day, even if it's just one guy that goes in the first round. I think it's going to end up being 2 or 3, but even if it's just one, this is the day that marks, okay, the narrative changes. And you're not going to be able to say what you once did about the University of Texas. I'm hopeful that the Longhorns have a productive 3 days. It's not just about tonight for me. You know what I mean? I want to see guys like Jonathan Brooks, JT Sanders, Christian Jones. His rise up the draft charts right now is ridiculous. We talked about that last night. People are wondering why Christian Jones is going up the draft charts. I think it's the same thing we talked about whenever he went to the Senior Bowl, I think it was.
Yeah.
A team went to the Senior Bowl with the question around Christian Jones. Can he start for us at guard? And the immediate reaction was, yes, he can. He might even be able to do some stuff at tackle.
Yeah.
And so where you're looking at right now, you're seeing this. It's the eternal question: ceiling versus floor. What is a prospect ceiling? What is a prospect's floor? Well, Christian Jones' floor for a lot of teams right now is starting guard. And so you saw him. There's somebody that has him ranked, I think, the 59th best prospect in the draft. Daniel Jeremiah, is that right, Jerry? And you're seeing guys like that have low floor or a high floor, go up because they're more sure things in a draft that, we'll see where it goes. But
it wouldn't totally shock me if he didn't go ahead of T'Vondre Sweat on day
no,
two.
That's where Daniel Jeremiah has it.
It wouldn't shock me. Here's the thing, because the NFL draft also, what they're doing is they're looking for warts. Remember when Derek Johnson came out? Is he physical enough to play in between the tackles in the NFL? I mean, Hall of Fame player. Think back to basketball. Kevin Durant could bench 185 pounds. I mean, how stupid was that? But that's what the draft is. They're looking for warts. They already seen the tape. They see the pro days. They're looking for warts. What I think helps Christian Jones, to your point, Bobby, is what you said, but also there aren't any warts with that guy. He's impressive to talk to. He's impressive to interview. And when these guys do all their investigative background, they aren't finding anything negative on him. And then when you talk to Kyle Flood, he talks about how this kid was process-oriented, bought into what we were doing to develop him, never questioned us, never backed down from it, and it took it and ran with it.
I think it's going to be a high floor draft in that regard. Once you get lower down, I mean, some teams will go for the higher ceiling, like a Tavondre Sweat, frankly. I was thinking about this, and my favorite players, and this sounds weird, but my favorite players for Texas in this draft, if I'm a GM or whatever, my two favorite are Xavier Worthy and Jonathan Brooks. And I know that sounds weird, but not to have Byron Murphy or Adonai Mitchell or even Tavondre Sweat, JT Sanders. I love Xavier Worthy and Jonathan Brooks. I think Worthy, everybody wants to compare him to these speed demons that we've seen. But I think he's closer to Devontae Smith than he is John Ross. And I know he's not Devontae Smith quite that, but I think he has a ability that is, frankly, he's just very sharp route runner compared to some other guys that round off their routes. He's a strong player, even though he's only 165 pounds. He tries to play bigger. He's not. People are saying, well, the Kansas City Chiefs took Hollywood Brown, got him away from the Ravens. Well, Hollywood Brown is just a flyer. There was never any time at Texas where literally Xavier Worthy was just a flyer in Steve Sarkisian's offense. He was a true receiver. So I like Xavier Worthy, and then Jonathan Brooks. I've liked him since the moment he got on campus. Liked him back when he was a recruit, and I just think there's something about how he goes to work and how he plays. He's got a patience that I think will really play well in the NFL. He is a patient runner.
I'll say this about Xavier Worthy. It's a little bit different. It's a little bit different body type. Mecole Hardman's thicker, but I think he's a better version of Mecole Hardman. And Mecole Hardman has had some really good years in the NFL. I think he's a better version of that, is what I think Xavier Worthy, with a little bit of a different frame. Worthy's a much thinner, more wiry frame. Mecole Hardman has a little bit more on that frame, but I think in the NFL, he's going to be a better version of that. And that's a really good player. Mecole Hardman had 3+ 500-yard receiving seasons, and I think Xavier Worthy is going to go beyond that.
All right, guys, before we move on, I need to tell folks out there about Gooder. And sunglasses don't get any better than Gooder. For $25 a pair, you can't beat it. They're 100% polarized. They don't slip. They don't bounce. They're always releasing new styles so you can stay hip. They even have a pair for Longhorn fans. It's Gooder. It's good for you. It's good for your wallet. I told you I stand behind them. I bought some for my kids this week, actually, a couple days ago. Should be here anytime now. You've heard Jerry rave about them. You've listened to Bobby tell you how he likes Gooder. And if you don't believe us, guys, just go online. See their more than 50,000 5-star reviews. They stand behind their product with a 30-day free return window and a 1-year warranty. So if you want to support the show and try a pair, Gooder is giving On Texas Football listeners free shipping. You can go to gooder.com/OnTexas, use promo code OnTexas, and you'll get that free shipping. And, of course, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee and 100% satisfaction. Again, that's gooder.com/OnTexas using promo code OnTexas and take advantage of that free shipping offer. Oh, every time I look over and see, I can't look at you when I'm reading, or I'll end up messing up.
That's why I do it. All right, let's reset Dominic Williams real quick.
Yep.
Okay. We had a lot of people join in. Questions about Dominic Williams. I'll again bring it up for Texas fans. Here we go. For my Dominic Williams update. I have an update on OnTexasFootball.com right now. TCU D-line transfer Dominic Williams wrapped up his visit this morning. The visit process will continue. He's expected to go to LSU probably this weekend and then Missouri. On Texas Football expects a decision between mid and late next week. I think Texas had knocked it out of the park. Look, what Texas visit doesn't? I mean, maybe you could go back in the day to Albert Hollis, right? Or DJ Williams back in the day, but we won't rehash all those stories right now. But I think Sark did a great job. I think Kenny Baker presentation did a great job. I think the Texas culture, the football program in general, the University of Texas checked all the boxes for Dominic Williams. I would say if it's me, I think Texas may be a little ahead of Oklahoma right now. And I think probably Oklahoma would feel the same way. But the visit process continues. He'll go see LSU, Bo Davis. He'll probably visit Missouri as well and then make a decision. But what this does tell you is he's going to play in the SEC. And that's the one thing we know. It's only SEC schools, assuming he doesn't go up to see how many players are left in the locker at Colorado, in the locker room at Colorado, which I don't think is going to happen. I think it'll be Missouri instead. But I think Texas did a great job with the visit. I think there's probably some confidence in Austin. But look, these things have to play out. And as long as you're taking more visits, it's going to be I don't know if people bite their nails, but some people may.
He was eating at Vince Young's steakhouse last night. There wasn't a clean plate, or there wasn't a dirty plate in the house. Those things were all clean last night. That must have been an end of dinner picture, by the way, Jerry. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
I did not notice that. Somebody's also asking, is there going to be a live stream for the first round of the NFL draft tonight? We'll reset some of these things we've talked about. Yes, on Texas football, we'll have a watch with us for the first round tonight. So Rod Babers, CJ Vogel, myself, Bobby will pop in at times too. But yeah, we're gonna have a first round watch party, which we're not just going to talk NFL draft, but that'll be fun as well while the picks come in. But we'll talk Texas football, spring ball, recruiting, portal, everything. We'll take all your questions. So just guys, join us tonight as well.
Yeah, Aaron Hogan, who does our watch with us during football season and is going to be doing it again with us this football season. He's going to be hosting it, and Aaron does a terrific job of getting over to making his little comments and getting it over to Rod or CJ or yourself, Jerry. It's good stuff. Hopefully you guys can join us. Some other news and notes that I think that we need to talk about now. Texas still also, as we reset, Texas still recruiting other players in the portal too. Jerry, give people a flavor for what you're hearing at defensive line right now, because obviously Texas has a lot of its I don't even know what to say. A lot of its irons in the fire, specifically on Dominic Williams. But what happens is there a plan B if for whatever reason Dominic Williams doesn't happen?
Yeah, so I definitely think so. And I'll say this too. And we've been saying this, even if Dominic Williams were to pick Texas, not out of the question Texas doesn't go for somebody else, not at that position, but it's not out of the question that Texas doesn't look at adding somebody else on the defensive line. I mean, I don't think Sark's necessarily playing around here, guys. He thinks he has a chance to have a tremendous football team next year. And I'm on record saying I think Texas will be better next year than they were last year. And that's saying something after the NFL draft the next 3 days. But yeah, I think there's an outside chance that Texas does take 2 more defensive linemen out of the portal. And that would be quite the haul if that happens. And look, the one thing I'll say is we're not going to break out the names right now. But one thing I'll say is it can't be anybody from the SEC to reset that. We've talked about that. No, you can't transfer SEC to SEC in the spring. So it's not going to be anybody from the SEC. Texas wants established guys that would come in and be a big-time player, difference maker for this team. But Savea, Bill Norton, very good players. I think Dominic Williams could be a 10-year NFL pro type of guy. And then there may be some other guys out there that have that type of upside, and we'll see where that goes. But it's not out of the question, even if Dominic Williams commits to Texas late next week. And I'm not saying he is, that Texas would be done. There's an outside chance they go after somebody else. So we'll have to see.
All right, guys, we got a lot of super chats that we need to knock out here. Let's start with this one from Jay Lee. This is a 2-parter here, so bear with me. And thank you, Jay Lee, by the way. He says, someone mentioned that Joseph's contract only getting extended through this year. If Watts doesn't get drafted tonight, that will be 0 defensive backs drafted in 3 years. Then he goes on to say, to me, that says a lot about Joseph/Gideon. Y'all's thoughts on that?
Tells me a lot about Tom Herman's recruiting. I would disagree that it shows that's and I say this, and I want to be not trying to be trite, but they did not recruit well at the end of that era, and those are the guys that have come through. So who did they recruit that should have been drafted in that category? Frankly, Ryan Watts was a transfer with the new staff. So I think that it has little to do with that development. Jaron Thompson runs a 4.65. You're not going to get those guys drafted. So my point being, it's more, Jay, I think I hear you on that stuff with guys being only extended 1 year, et cetera. That's not incredibly rare in today's college football or anything. A lot of coaches are only on 1 year contracts across the whole staff. So that happens as well. My bigger piece is I don't think that they had guys that could be drafted. The only one that could be drafted was DeMarvion Overshown. He moved down to the linebacker. So what else have they had, Jerry? I mean, nothing. I mean, no offense. I shouldn't say nothing because there are some good players for Texas. They weren't elite NFL.
Well, Mike G brings up a good point. Earth is flat guy and there's no outer space. Tyler Owens from Tech may get drafted. So that would be one.
Yeah, and they took him. I don't know. I mean,
but that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have another super chat here. This one from Jack. While we're talking about the draft, he says whoever, and thank you once again, Jack. He says whoever gets Jordan Whittington as the preferred walk-on, I think he means as an undrafted free agent, will love him.
I hope so. I hope so. And if he hears his name called, it'll be on Saturday at the lower ends of the draft, Jack and everybody. I hope guys like he and Ryan Watts get drafted, actually, so they get some guaranteed money beyond the undrafted free agent level. The three guys that we believe right now are on the cusp or on the back end of not getting drafted are Ryan Watts, Jordan Whittington, and then also Keelan Robinson. Those are the three that kind of you wonder about if they have a chance. I could see any of those guys being drafted late. I really could, because with Whittington, he's such a glue guy. You have to think that he would be really good on special teams if that's where he focused. He never really focused on that, Jerry, in part because he was often injured. But Keelan Robinson's another special teams guy that could be a little X factor for you. And then obviously Ryan Watts. I don't, you mentioned, Jerry, how Christian Jones did everything right. I'm not sure Ryan Watts didn't do the same.
Yeah.
He just had some injuries in the middle of it. But his pro workout, when we were at the NFL draft the NFL draft day at the UT earlier this spring, I was impressed with a couple guys. He was one of them. He really he went out there and worked hard for what he's done and tried to be his best. So my hat's off to Ryan Watts at this point. I hope he does get a chance in the league.
And then one other super chat. This one, once again, from Jack. He says, do you think we could possibly lose a portal guy who just portaled to Texas? Thinking that Blackshire can't like being third string, and not just him, but do y'all see anybody? I mean, I don't even know if that's happened across college football.
Oh, it's happened.
Yeah, it has actually. Yes.
I'll just say, it happens every day in Colorado. Dion doesn't even have time to remember the guys' names, and they're gone. So Charlie Strong would really struggle with that one. Now, oof, man, he wouldn't even. Charlie would call the guys by the numbers. He'd be like, "Hey, 45's gone. Where's 45? He already left." I mean, I don't know, Bobby. I guess the guy who's third team would be the one, right? But there's different types of that. I mean, here's the thing. Amari Niblack ran third team in drills, but that was so Quinn was throwing to Gunnar Helm, and then Arch would throw to the two, and then Quinn would throw to Amari Niblack so they could build some rapport together, right? So that's a little different. So all third teams aren't the same, let's say that. That would be the only one, Bobby. I could, and I'm not saying anything's going to happen, I don't know what your thoughts are on. Look, none of the other guys now. Somebody's asking, by the way, when's Takario Davis coming to Austin for a visit? I've not heard a date on that, but I'll be very surprised if it doesn't happen.
All right. And yesterday we had somebody ask about Directors Cup updates, and I just noticed they just posted this, so I wanted to get this out here. Number 1, Stanford rowing, and number 2, Texas rowing will go head-to-head this weekend. The winner could walk away with the number 1 ranking, but a Texas win would represent a 20-point swing in the predicted Directors Cup finish. So a big weekend for the Directors Cup and the Longhorns, and of course Stanford.
I want Texas to go out of the Big 12 on top on so many different levels.
Yes.
I'm even rooting for rowing right now.
Bobby, we're about to get to that. We're about to get to this.
Actually, we're going to go ahead and get to that right now, Jerry. Folks out there about Manscaped.
This is a special Manscaped 5.0 read today because John Fields and the Texas golf team literally took the 5.0 to the Big 12 on the way out the door. They won by 18 strokes. Oklahoma State's looking up at Texas by 18 strokes. Are you kidding me? They got 5.0 at Whispering Pines, man. Oklahoma got demolished. Everybody got demolished. Texas crushed everybody. 25 under on the last 2 rounds. Blake, you could play that 5.0 noise for the next 10 days. That's how bad Texas beat the Big 12 in golf this week. But call them what you want. Knee knockers, golden nuggets, and those thigh slappers, which the chat really loves to talk about. But our friends at Manscaped refer to them as the boys. Not every man has children, but every man is responsible for their 2 boys below the waist. When your little guys have more hair than they need, trust Manscaped for all your grooming dreams. Boys need love too, so join the 10 million men plus worldwide who trust manscaped.com by going to manscaped.com and use code ONTEXAS, all caps, for 20% off plus free shipping. You heard it here first. The boys are back in town. Every man knows how scary it can get when going for a close shave below the waist. That's why I trust Manscaped for all my sensitive areas. Introducing a Lawnmower 3.0, the 4.0, and the 5.0 Ultra. Yep, that's 3 ball trimmers. Isn't it awesome? It wasn't for the rest of the Big 12 in golf, though.
Good stuff. Worked in Texas golf with it. No one expected that. So coming with a fresh read each and every day right here on Coffee and Football. All right, guys, so we got plenty of time for questions, so get your questions in. We're going to get to as many of those as we can here. And let's start with this one from Kenneth. Kenneth says, do you think that having an unproven defensive tackle coach is hurting recruiting?
Not yet. I mean, I don't think anything's come to pass where we would say, wow, this is difficult. And he's not, look, a lot of these guys understand that he's got as much experience as some other guys do in certain situations. He's been a D1 coach before. He is definitely younger, but that also means he might connect better than other coaches previously. And, I'm not worried about defensive tackle recruiting at this point based on who I see on the board, who's committed, who's come in and likes what Kenny Baker has to say. I'm actually really I had the same amount of reticence as that question heading into this, probably in February, March. Slowly, I think I'm getting won over a little bit by how Kenny Baker is attacking this and how Texas as a whole is supporting him. So I feel like I can see that. That was a February question to me. Where they are now, I'm feeling more and more confident that not only is Johnny Nansen going to be a stud recruiter at linebacker, I think Kenny Baker is going to be really, really good at defensive line.
Yeah, so I think this too. I'll say this. I think Kenny Baker's a really good pass rush coach. Somebody in this chat may confirm that, but I think he's a really good pass rush coach as well. As a coach at the Miami Dolphins, I think things are going to be just fine there. I think Kenny Baker's going to do very well in recruiting, going to do really good at his job. Look, we're in the NIL day and age too in recruiting. So you got to remember that, man. When you're battling the SEC for guys, if anybody thinks it's easy, I don't know what to say. I mean, I just don't know what to say. I mean, but I think Kenny Baker's just fine. He'll do very well. I think he has a great presentation from talking to multiple kids in high school. So I'm not hearing anything negative. I just know that these recruitments, you have to cast a wide net to hit your numbers. If you're going to be recruiting from Texas east along I-10, you have to hit your numbers. We had a discussion yesterday about like some of the high schools with the most NFL guys, but I'm just going to throw this out there just to know how difficult recruiting is, and especially at that position. Your 5 states that lead the NFL in draft picks per capita are Louisiana, are in order. Georgia's 1 now, is taking over the 1 spot, most NFL players per capita. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida. Those are the top 5. So when you go in and recruit those areas, everybody else is too. And there's schools that are closer to those areas. So, and that's where the majority of your D linemen are coming from. So you gird up your loins.
That also means you need to do well in the state of Texas for the ones that are available.
Yeah.
That's where Texas has gotten off kilter at times. You look at a Tavondre Sweat or a Byron Murphy, I think they may be the only 2 state of Texas defensive linemen getting drafted this week.
Yep.
Interior defense.
Well, while we're talking about the defensive line, we're going to stay on this question from Dirk Vader. He says, I watched Norton play against OU in the bowl game. I didn't see anything that got him personally excited. What he wants to know, what is he missing? Or is he just spoiled from watching Tavondre Sweat?
Yeah, so I think, look, Sweat's a playmaker at that position. I think Bill Norton is a point of attack player. That I think Bill Norton is a really, really good role player. He's not a guy that's on draft boards, right? So there's a difference there. Dominic Williams would be the guy that's on draft boards if Texas gets him, and he's going to be pretty high up on draft boards. So I think that's the difference. I think Bill Norton is a really good role player. I think Savea, really good role player. I think Texas, that's why they're continuing to add to this group because they need a guy or 2 that's a playmaker on top of being really good within that role.
All right.
I have no problem. So here's my take on it. The question isn't right now, it would be nice if you could get a Dominic Williams and truly, quote unquote, replace potentially Byron Murphy and or Tavondre Sweat. Okay. But take that off the table because that's very, very rare unless you get that one guy. Bill Norton is a guy that gives you snaps that aren't unproductive. He doesn't get caught up in the wash and get pushed back into the linebacker because he's got 4 years experience.
Yeah. And by the way,
he's perfect, but you're not necessarily looking and not necessarily going to get wow players at defensive tackle. You're going to try, but Texas has a need there beyond just the wow players, in my opinion. That's what they're saying when they go out and get Tia Savea and Bill Norton. They're saying we have a need to not get caught in the wash with the guys that we have. That's reality.
Okay, and then this next question here is going to be, well, let's take this one from, I just lost it. My apologies. Oh, Horn 7 here. He says, in y'all's opinion, who are the top 3 to 4 defensive line college developers, defensive tackle coaches? Who would you have on your list?
It's typically the guys that are best recruiters. And this is what I was getting at with Kenny Baker. I mean, it's easy to say Larry Johnson at Ohio State. Well, Larry Johnson recruits 5-stars. It's easy to say Nick Saban and whoever's coaching the Alabama defensive line. Well, Dallas Turner and Will Anderson were both 5-stars. It's easy to say those guys, and it's kind of hidden. So we can talk about Bo Davis potentially being one of those guys. He certainly got a lot out of both Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. But, I mean, look, typically speaking, there are a lot of good coaches. There are very few coaches that are difference makers in that regard. It usually has more to do with the environment and culture of the overall team that they're brought in to be. That's where I'm at. And so I don't believe that there's a 3 or 4. There's guys like Larry Johnson that have been out there. He did it at Penn State. He did it at Ohio State. But again, if you're adding top 5 defensive linemen every year, you're going to be the guy that is said to be the best developer. Is he? I don't know. I don't know if he is.
I would say this too. I would say for the D line and maybe offensive line specific, not that it doesn't matter for all positions, but the big human guys, your strength and conditioning combined with your D line coach. Because look, those guys who can maximize that body in the offseason and who can develop that guy from a skill set standpoint and almost as much as develop them, because the NFL loves guys they can develop too, by the way, is do you motivate? Because a defensive line, if your motor turns off even a little, you get your butt kicked. So who can motivate and keep the guys' motors on all the time? Now, some guys are just Casey Hampton, Byron Murphy were born with great motors. They're always going to have great motors. Blake Monroe, Bobby Burton, or myself could coach those guys. They're going to have great motors. You don't even have to say anything. But the other guys turn it on and turn it off sometimes. So who can keep that motor going? And then who can develop that guy physically? Now, Nick Saban will come on here and say, well, we got 12 defensive linemen and they're all NFL capable. That competition keeps guys motivated. And I think there's truth in that too. But I think on a day-to-day basis, practice-to-practice basis, who can keep that guy's motor going, I think is so big for these guys in college. Who can maximize it in ways other than teaching hand placement and pass rush.
One other defensive tackle question here, and this was actually a super chat from Jay Lee, but it kind of messed up. So I got you, Jay. Thank you once again. He says, I brought up that in a deep dive, Williams played no zero technique at TCU. I was informed that it was a different scheme. So how do we know that he would be a good zero if he hasn't done it?
I will just say that he is a guy that if you watch what he does on film, he actually attacks the guard and or the center, okay, and is able to anchor and fight through double teams. He was constantly double teamed. And that is something that will happen at any school against their best defensive lineman. Furthermore, he still gets into the backfield and makes some disruptive plays. He has a body type as well that tends to anchor well. He's a little bit shorter, yet still strong. It's not so much, and people say this, like, let's talk about what Pete Kwiatkowski does, Jerry. They run a true nose or a tilt. Okay. Sean Rogers called it a tilt. Okay. Everybody understands that kind of vernacular. TCU does not. Not with, what was his name? Joe Gillespie when he took over. Now, under Gary Patterson, they would often run at Dominic Williams at a nose. So you've seen what he can do. And I think that the ability to push into someone and stop their forward movement is really what it's about at that position. You don't want the center to be able to hook you easily or push you back at all. And frankly, that's where Vernon Broughton has problems.
Yeah.
He gets pushed and hooked. He actually gets hooked less than he gets pushed. And so that's really what you're looking for there is that initial surge between the two parties, center and nose tackle, or guard and nose tackle in Dominic Williams' case.
And look, Dominic Williams is going to be a really good one. He's a really good one gapper, guys. And I think he can do both, but I think he is a NFL level guy.
All right. One super chat real quick, guys. A comment from Nate Russ. Thank you, Nate. He says, let's get that on Texas football swag out, fellas. Need some before kickoff. Hook them.
I normally wear the black. I got the gray on today. I don't know if it shows up, but I got a little gray one on today. Giving them all a test run. We like what they look like.
Okay, y'all. Before we move on here, we got something else to talk about. But first, Bobby, I'm going to let you tell folks out there about one of our newer sponsors, the Carrot Concierge.
Yeah, we're going to do you guys a favor. With Mother's Day coming up, you may be like me, looking for the right gift for the woman in your life. Make sure you check out thecarrotconcierge.com. Jody Reynolds is a personal jeweler. She is the Carrot Concierge. You can see some of her beautiful creations here. You can use the QR code on the screen to see even more, or visit her on Instagram or her website, thecarrotconcierge.com. Jody's an Austin resident, a Texas fan. She and her family watch on Texas football and listen. She prides herself in providing personal service. That's what a personal jeweler does. She takes the extra steps to make sure your lady gets exactly what she wants. And because she doesn't have the overhead of a storefront, she often gets higher quality inventory at much lower prices, as much as 30% less than what you'd see at a normal jewelry store. I recently ordered a piece for my wife for Mother's Day. It's a special bracelet that includes the name of my two kids, or our two kids, I should say. My wife will hit me for not saying our two kids there. Jody has a number of different tennis bracelets that are cool, rings, necklaces, and more. So if you're looking for the right Mother's Day gift, give Jody a shout. Visit thecarrotconcierge.com. Visit her website, give her a call or text, and take care of that special someone in your life. We appreciate you, Jody, and all you do. I'm anxious to get that bracelet in from her for Mother's Day.
Good stuff. All right, y'all. Speaking of good stuff, some good quarterback play expected this year in the SEC. Let's talk about that for a little bit. And what I'm going to do, we're going to break them down 8 at a time. We'll cut them in 2 different lists here. So let's start here with the more of the top tier guys, I guess you could say. What y'all's initial thoughts? And then Jerry, I know you got a question that you want to present to the chat that I think is going to be interesting as well.
Yeah. So look, I've watched some of the spring games, whether it's the condensed games or 15 minutes of highlights of some of these guys from spring games, because obviously Texas had their spring game on the 20th. I'm not seeing anything else. We had a recruiting event on the 13th, so I didn't see any of those spring games at the time. But I thought it'd be cool to talk about today. You know, those of you guys that watch spring games, watch a little bit of Jackson Arnold. There you go. Nico. I thought Carson Beck looked tremendous, by the way. Quinn obviously only played 2 series. The Jackson Dart, Brady Cook, Connor Wiegman, who was, I think was a little up and down, Graham Mertz. Where would y'all rank these guys, first of all? And let's say this. Let's say Quinn's a top 2 or 3 guy in the SEC. After the spring game, where would you rank Arch Manning on these lists? I'm interested to see what people have to say. I thought what was interesting, Bobby, watching Jalen Milroe, I watched a little bit of Alabama spring game. Boy, they got some good running backs for that Kalen DeBoer scheme. Guys, they're going to fit that perfectly, the pin and pull. They're going to run the ball pretty well with Jalen Milroe and with Kalen DeBoer, I think. I'm a big Brady Cook fan because of his athleticism, and he's got good targets coming back. Obviously, Jackson Dart, 3rd-year starter, kind of like Quinn Ewers is. Nico was interesting because if you watch the Tennessee spring game and really take a look at it, they're only letting him play on half the field. There are times where the other side, the receivers on the not play side, they aren't really even running routes. So Nico in the spring game only played on half the field. That's going to be interesting as team's game plan for him this year to see where he's at. A really good athlete. But it restricts a guy if you're only playing on half the field unless you're an Art Briles scheme.
That is kind of what Josh Heupel does with that offense. Look, I don't know. It's very interesting to me that the SEC quarterbacks, because you see a couple of guys that could be top round picks in Beck and Ewers. And then after that, you see guys that have a lot of question marks or who you wonder what their top end ability really is. So Brady Cook, for example, okay, good quarterback at Missouri. You wonder if he's really a first round guy because does he have the actual arm strength? Whereas Connor Wegman has the arm strength. You just wonder if he's actually got that kind of first round ability because he's been injured and hasn't always looked great, And so you have this mix, I think, of guys that are decent players, but I would wonder where they're going to actually work out. Like, would you take Jackson Arnold over Blake Shapen right now? I mean,
the first half.
No, I watched the recording of the OU spring game. I'm telling you, the guy that I like, Jackson Arnold's okay. I mean, I think he's a leader type guy. The guy that I actually think is really, really talented for them, like more talented, is Michael Hawkins.
Yes. Michael Hawkins he is a college dual threat guy that trained with Kevin Murray for years that understands the quarterback position. People can think whatever they want about Kevin Murray. I know the guy, and I've been to his workouts. Kevin Murray is tremendous at quarterback development, and he worked with Hawkins from 7th grade on. I'm with you, Bobby. Michael Hawkins, Jackson Arnold is the guy that's going to start, and he's going to be the guy I talked about. But I'll just say this: he better play well. If Hawkins gets on the field, it's going to be a different type of deal. I have a feeling for Oklahoma.
I'd put Nussmeier over Mertz. Mertz is a little bit of a journeyman QB to me. Nussmeier over Arnold as well. I think that it's going to be interesting. Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers are the two best. Jalen Milroe in that offense is intriguing to me. I'm just looking down this group. I don't know Peyton Thorne or Taylon Green or Lenoris Sellers.
Your question on Blake Shapen versus Jackson Arnold. If Blake Shapen was at Oklahoma with Oklahoma talent, I'd take him over Jackson Arnold, especially the first half of the season. We'll see how Jackson does as he gets his feet wet in Power 5 level, but definitely the first half of the season. There's no doubt. I'll also say this. I thought there's been some questions there. I think with Jalen Milroe, what's going to be kind of fascinating to watch with Alabama is how much of the playbook does Kalen DeBoer use in the passing game with Jalen Milroe. I think that's what's going to be interesting to see because he's going to put him in the best position for success. I mean, the guy's a great freaking coach. That's going to happen. But how much is he going to have to hold back to do that with Jalen Milroe? That'll be interesting to watch. But Alabama's running backs are a very good fit in that scheme. I'll say that after watching him. I think Brady Cook has great guys to throw to. Graham Mertz, now, he has the best slot receiver in the SEC. Eugene Wilson, the sophomore, is an absolute stud. I saw him at Under Armour camp at Miami before his senior season. I thought he was a poor man's Jalen Waddle, and that is a compliment to a slot receiver. That means you're really, really good, but you may not quite be as explosive as Jalen Waddle, but Eugene Wilson, a future pro, tremendous slot receiver. But I thought what's interesting there is the guy that Texas will go up against, the team that I think upgraded their quarterback from a year ago, not saying they're going to be a good team, is Diego Pavia at Vanderbilt. He's a good player. He's better than what Vanderbilt's been playing with.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Sure, a lot of people putting Arch on the top 2 to 3. There's a couple comments over on ontexasfootball.com. Red 5, for example, says, think I would slot Arch somewhere between 2 and 3 as well. So,
man, the interesting thing about that group of quarterbacks to me, Jerry, is I don't know. There's a lot of good quarterbacks, maybe not great quarterbacks in that group.
Yeah.
That's how that feels. And maybe that's normal, right? Your top 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, but Bobby, I think that next year when we're going to have time to talk about the 25 NFL draft, I think it's wide open. Like if you think about last year at this time, even before the draft or after the draft, it was a consensus by people that Caleb Williams is going to go number 1. I'm not on that train, by the way. I'm not big on him like that. Unless he stops giving up on plays. If you give up on plays in the NFL, you're dead man walking. He's going to have to play a little bit more of a quarterback to me at the next level. But it was Caleb Williams. It was Drake May. Everybody was talking that these guys were the 2. They were going to go 1, 2 in the draft. Jalen Daniels kind of really came on, right? J.J. McCarthy was talked about, especially by Jim Harbaugh. But this year, when you look at the SEC and you look at college football as a whole, which is a great draft for Quinn Ewers, it's wide open. I mean, there's going to be mock drafts come out, but it's not going to be consensus. This guy's the lock to be number one. This guy's the lock to be the number 2 quarterback off the board. It's not going to be like that. Riley Leonard could literally come out of nowhere and be the guy. Quinn could be the guy. Carson Beck could be the guy. You just don't know right now. That's really good for all these quarterbacks. But I also think the 2025 group of NFL quarterbacks it's a bit of wide open race, and I think that kind of falls in line with the SEC. What you're talking about, Bobby, it's wide open this next year at quarterback. I mean, could Cam Ward get into that equation? Maybe, but I think if he was high enough on NFL draft boards, he would have gone pro this year. I really don't think he wanted to play another year in college.
Yeah, he would not go because of his delivery.
Yep.
His delivery is too low in the NFL, period. That's why he is going to have to go back.
Okay, guys, we got 2 super chats that I want to just read real quick. This first one from Jeff Carey. He says, "You gentlemen do a great job and work very hard. All of you deserve a virtual hug."
Bring it in. Bring it in.
And then I brought this up when y'all were talking about Quinn Ewers, and I can't remember where this was actually said. I think we even discussed it a while back. But Teddy Lehman saying that Quinn Ewers is what held Texas back in 23.
Dang, he must really hate Dylan Gabriel then.
He may
or did he throw Venables under the bus? Did he throw his old D coordinator? What held OU back in 23? Venables?
Oh boy.
Dylan?
I want to say this about as it relates to that. I mean, look, I've seen quarterbacks who have held Texas back before. Quinn Ewers was not one of them.
No.
I'll just put it that way. I'm not saying Quinn is perfect. Look, I mean, everybody wants the quarterback to be perfect, and Quinn Ewers is not perfect. He ain't holding nobody back, though, either. I just put it that way.
Well, Bobby, before we move on, we're going to talk about the portal again here in just a second. But first, can you tell folks out there about Rick Favreau and Austin Underground one last time?
Our Thursday morning show has been brought to you by Rick and his group, Austin Underground, for almost a year now. We appreciate them very much. Since 2004, Austin Underground has specialized in difficult underground commercial installations. The team's engineering background gives Austin Underground the ability to perform work other firms often consider too risky. Rick and his team offer an end-to-end seamless client experience, including communication, budgeting, staffing, and top-notch trade partners. And most importantly, they produce solid quality work each and every time. A lot of repeat customers for Rick and his group. That's Austin Underground. Give them a shout if you're looking to do anything difficult underground commercial installations.
And we want to thank them for sponsoring each and every Thursday right here on Coffee and Football. And guys, we've had a lot of people join us since we last talked about it, and especially since we first talked about it at the beginning of the show. So let's close with the portal. A lot going on, obviously, both in football and basketball for the Longhorns. And I'm just going to let you guys take it away.
Yeah, Dominic Williams, TCU defensive line transfer, wrapped up his visit to Texas this morning. Checked all the boxes, had a great visit. What do you expect? It's University of Texas at Sarkeesian. Texas is great on the official visit process. I think Kenny Baker had, from what I was told by somebody close to that recruitment on the Williams side, that he had a great presentation. They liked what they heard from Kenny Baker and Steve Sarkeesian, PK, Nance, and all the guys at the University of Texas. So I think things went as well as could be expected. And Texas got about all of the out of the visit as they wanted. The process continues. He's visited Oklahoma. He's now visited Texas. He'll go visit LSU, and he'll likely also visit Missouri on Texas football as of today, April 25th at 9:17 a.m. Expects a decision mid to late next week with Dominic Williams. So it's going to play out for about a week. He'll visit a couple of those schools that we just mentioned, LSU and Missouri, and then come to a decision. So, Texas, I think Texas feels as good as you can about recruitment that's going to continue to be ongoing. So we'll see what happens. Texas there's a couple other D linemen that are out there for Texas. Look, I think if they get Dominic Williams, they could be done, but they might also take one more if they can get him. So not out of the question. Basketball, by the way, at cornerback, we continue to hear Takario Davis out of Arizona is the top guy. Bobby mentioned Anthony Johnson Jr. out of Western Kentucky, really fast kid from South Florida that went D2 all the way up to D1, and now he's going to end up at Power 5 as an NFL draft prospect. So he's a guy that I think Texas likes, but Takario Davis is the top guy. Basketball recruiting, Rodney Terry's staff got a big one yesterday. Jordan Pope out of Oregon State averaged 17.6 in year 2 at Oregon State. A big shot maker, big shot taker type of guard, 6'1.5", grown an inch and a half since high school. I think Frank Haith, this is really his strength. Chris Ogden is GM of Texas basketball. Frank Haith has such a great feel and eye for offensive basketball talent. I've told stories about PJ Tucker, AJ Abrams, and what he did when he was at Texas, kind of identifying those guys early, convincing Rick Barnes to take PJ Tucker without ever seeing him play. That's trusting an assistant, by the way. But Jordan Pope fits really well with Julian Larry, obviously Trey Johnson, Tremont Mark out of Arkansas, and Kendall Weaver. I think Texas is done. Somebody asked about Rylan Griffin earlier. I think Texas is done at guard. I think Texas is looking for one more big, wall-up, rugged defender who can rebound outside of area. That's your ideal guy there, protect the rim. Because Jason Kemp from Indiana State is going to play a college 4 that can play 3 in a big lineup. But I think Texas has really constructed the guards, the college 4 part really well. One other guy that Texas still really wants is Rydas Petraeus out of the portal. He's from Air Force, originally from Arlington, Texas. He'll decide, I think, between Texas and Cal. That could very much come down to Texas is where he wants to be, but does Cal offer more minutes? We'll see, because Texas has some really good players on this roster that are going to play facing the basket right now. But he's underrated. He's not high on all these portal rankings, but I'm telling you, just go watch the kid. He knows how to play offensive basketball. So the 4 guys Texas has got from the portal, with Pope now included in that, combined to shoot 38.2, I believe, from the 3 last year, and 82.1 from the free throw line. That's pretty good. And they got height at guard coming in, so they're going to be a more versatile team next year. But the pieces all have to fit. It all has to come together. They still need a couple other guys. They still got a little more work to do. But that tip of the hat for those guys for what they've done in the portal. Got some really good offensive players. Somebody's asking Christian Willis from Georgia in the portal. No D lineman from SEC to SEC in the spring semester. Christian Miller, I think, is but here's the thing I would say about D-line recruiting. Even if it's a talented freshman type of kid, Texas is going for experienced guys that could be draft picks with their remaining spots here in the portal at defensive line. That's really what they're going for. They have more adults in the room now with Savea and Norton. Those guys are different players, but have played against high-level competition. Texas is looking now, what is a guy or two out there that could be a potential NFL player? They want adults in the room that are difference maker type of players.
On the exit, obviously the portal is not just entrance only; it's also exit. Texas now has 8 guys that have left the team in football from last year. That was punctuated the last 2 days by 2 defensive backs. Terrence Brooks, a starter out of Little Elm, entering the portal, and then also Austin Jordan yesterday, a star position player, one of the nickel spots at Texas, entered the portal. So Texas currently has 8 that have entered the portal. Only 1 has found a new home at this point, and that's Peyton Kirkland, the offensive lineman headed to Colorado. My take on this right now is I said 6 to 8 would enter the portal leaving at the beginning of this. I kind of rearranged that to I said 8 to 11 at one point. I think there's definitely 1 more likely to head in, or very likely. But again, I'm not going to overstate that right now. But we'll see where it ends up. I think that the new number is probably 9 to 11. We'll see who those guys might be in the next, 24 to 48 hours. I think we'll hear more, Jerry. The portal itself doesn't close until Tuesday of next week. But I don't see, as of right now, because Sark has had all his meetings already with every player, I don't see a lot of last-minute changes like we might with other programs. I don't see any 11th hour issues for Texas.
And I'll say this as well. Somebody's asking, where does that put Texas on scholarships? I think C.J. Vogel later today is going to have this updated scholarship board on ontexasfootball.com, which is always a really good conversation.
Yeah, we were at Texas was at 89 without Bert Auburn. Okay, so they've lost 8, so that puts them at 81. Well, add in Bill Norton, that's at 82. So they've got room for 3 more as of right now. And yes, that does include the mid-year guys like a Santana Wilson or a Silas Bolden and Nate Kibble, all that group as well. So they net right now would be 82, in my opinion.
Somebody's asking about Santana Wilson, not an early enrollee. He gets in late May, a technician. Going to be a good player, I think.
There you go. All right, guys. So that's going to do it for today's edition of Coffee and Football presented by Rick Valbro and Austin Underground. I want to thank them along with the Carrot Concierge, Manscaped, and Gooder as well for sponsoring today's show. Don't forget, the NFL draft starts tonight. Texas just put out this video. There will be a watch with us right here on the On Texas Football. So they put a little teaser there. Could we see 3 Longhorns taken in the first round? It very well could be possible. So be sure to come hang out with the guys, talk about that, discuss a little bit about what your favorite team may or may not be doing in this year's draft. And yeah, so for Bobby Burton and Jerry Hamilton, I'm Blake Monroe, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Hook 'em, guys.